Hi, everybody. It's great to have you here at the Lagoon House. Thank you for being here. Have so many friendly faces in the audience. It really does mean a lot to me to have an audience, so I appreciate your attendance today. Thank you on the Zoom. I understand we've got a lot of people out there in the Zoom world watching, so thank you for your interest in what we're doing and for participating today. We are going to hold questions until the end. We will be fielding questions through cards in the room and through the question and answer on the Zoom or the chat. Through the question and answer on the Zoom. So thank you all again. My name is Leesa Souto. I'm the Executive Director of the Marine Resources Council, MRC. Welcome to the public release of our annual Indian River Lagoon report card. Okay. I'm like, well, that didn't work. On the cover of the new report card, on the cover of the new Indian River Lagoon report card is a photo of the Indian River Lagoon taken in Indian River County from the historic town of Sebastian, which overlooks Pelican Island. Pelican Island was our nation's first of 567 wildlife refuges. In this photo, a storm is passing as the sun is rising on another beautiful day in paradise. And many storms have come and gone since those first people realized that paradise needed to be protected. Our little piece of paradise along the Indian River Lagoon. Many storms have come and many storms have gone, but more are coming. And here in Florida, when it rains, it pours. Dry land turns wet and streams become torrents of water. All the land from Ormond Beach to West Palm to the interior counties clear to Orlando drains to our coast. People's yards, agricultural fields, cattle pastures, parking lots, sidewalks, and roads all drain into the storm system that dumps into our streams, canals, rivers, and to our coast. Much, unfortunately, makes its way into the Indian River Lagoon. This graphic shows how a watershed drains. So it's not just water that is flowing, it's also all of the watershed pollutants that it carries. Pet waste, fertilizer, pesticide, herbicides, chemicals, car tires, so much more. Everything you can think of. The rain flows all of this pollution into the storm drain and into the lagoon. People also flow to the Indian River Lagoon and across the lagoon, as they have been for decades. People have been moving to Florida at a rate of 1,000 people a day. They arrive by air, by road, by water, by rocket ship, in ever-increasing numbers. They come to visit, to live, to work, to learn, and of course, to play in the lagoon. We invite every single one of them to unite to protect our paradise, which is why MRC exists. We have been educating and engaging citizens along the East Central Florida coast, empowering our community to protect our paradise for over 30 years. With support from you, our volunteers, members, and partners, we accomplish our comprehensive mission from Volusia to Palm Beach County through 3 key program areas: science, education, and action. We invite you to join us as we continue to bring our lagoon into balance by advancing the use of science to guide strategies and evaluate success. We'll talk more about this later, but before we do, let's get to MRC's most important science interpretation tool, the annual Indian River Lagoon report card. The cover of the new Indian River Lagoon report card features a headline. It reads, "Protect Our Paradise." Today, we're here to share some good news. We got good news. What we're doing appears to be working to some extent. As you explore the report card, pay attention to this graph right here. It shows the long-tracked relationship between Indian River Lagoon water quality, which is the blue line, and habitat health, represented by seagrass transects, which is the orange line. The dotted lines in the graph is the trend line, and you can see that the water quality overall in the lagoon has been relatively stable and is in fact increasing. It's becoming better. But the seagrass quality in the lagoon is declining precipitously. Generally, these two trended together from 1996 to 2010. When one went up, the other went up, and when one went down, the other went down. As water quality went, so seagrass went. This is no longer the case. As we get past 2016, the two diverge. We need to know more about why this is happening. And I'll talk more about that later as well. Before I do, let's just look at water quality for a moment. The green line, so this chart shows you a couple things. One is the relationship between seagrass and water quality. The other is the relationship of both of them to the state's regulatory target. The green line represents where we need to be. And you can see that water quality actually exceeded our state's regulatory targets for a number of years. And seagrasses were also doing very, very well in the mid-aughts, as I call them, the middle 2000s. So what on earth occurred in 2010, the first super bloom, that really promulgated the collapse that we're seeing? So let's look at what water quality is being measured currently. The report card uses state agency collected data over the past 24 years. There are 4 parameters that have been consistently measured over that time frame. 2 of them are nitrogen and phosphorus. Okay, I don't know if you can see the pointer, but 2 of them are nitrogen and phosphorus, which are the nutrients that feed algae blooms. The third is chlorophyll A, which is really a measurement of the amount of algae that's in the water column. And the fourth is turbidity, which measures water clarity, how clear the water is. These parameters, nitrogen, phosphorus, chlorophyll A, and turbidity, relate to each other, such that reducing nutrients should reduce algae, which should increase water clarity, make the water clearer, which should increase seagrass. Because if the water's clearer, sunlight reaches the bottom, and seagrasses photosynthesize, so they need sunlight to survive. In the report card, remember there are 10 different regions that we grade because there are 10 different regulatory targets that we need to compare the actual conditions to. So just quickly to remind you, and also to those of you who may be new to the report card, I will go through them very quickly. The Mosquito Lagoon is separated into 3 different regions, north, central, and south. The Banana River Lagoon is that portion of the lagoon on the east side of Merritt Island that goes down to about Dragon's Point, to those of you who know who are local, about the O'Galley Causeway. And then the Central Indian River Lagoon, which starts there at about the Melbourne Causeway and goes all the way down to the St. Lucie County line. So it includes the south end of Brevard County, and the entire Indian River County is the Central Indian River Lagoon. And then south of St. Lucie County is where the South Indian River Lagoon begins. And just as a point of reference, the South Indian River Lagoon Central is where the Lake Okeechobee discharge comes in, clear down here, comes in right through the St. Lucie estuary. So if we look at water quality scores over time, and I'll give you a minute to kind of stare at all these numbers for a second. These tables and charts are going to be on our website, so you'll have plenty of time to look at them at your leisure. But you can see here, I went ahead and did the calculation. When we look at the water quality scores, there continues to be water quality improvements across the board in almost every single region of the lagoon. This is good news. This is the good news, folks. Water quality is getting better. It's great news even. We're making progress. Water's cleaner and there's less harmful algae. thanks to all that's being done, from individual actions to county and state programs, federal funding initiatives. Everyone is stepping up and playing a part in bringing the lagoon back to health. But guess what, folks? We need to do more, because even though the water is clearer, the seagrass isn't returning, and that's a serious problem. Let's look at seagrass scores. So habitat health is seagrass. The score is declining. It's at a 33, which is an F minus, and it's continuing to decline. It's the trend of its continued decline that's most troubling. Nearly every region of the lagoon, even though water clarity is improving, the seagrass is not. So what's going up? What is going on here? We have to think about, what do we know about seagrass first? So fortunately, thanks to scientists at St. John's River Water Management District, people like Lori Morris, Lauren Hall, and others, we know a lot about the seagrasses in the Indian River Lagoon. We know we have 7 species, one of the most diverse seagrass communities on Earth. We know that they can reproduce both through seeds and rhizomes, so they can do different types of reproduction. They once covered the bottom of the lagoon, estimates as many as 47,000 hectares, which is a little over 100,000 acres of seagrass used to cover the lagoon bottom. It provided some important ecosystem services like structure to the bottom where it would hold sand in place so that other vegetation could grow. Habitat for things like shrimp and fish that have to hide from their parents to not get eaten. This is a great place for things to hide and avoid being preyed upon. And even clearing water. Seagrass can clear water up, and it is the foundational key of our food web in the Indian River Lagoon. You remember the food chain? Well, in the lagoon, it's a web. Everything is very interconnected. Without seagrass as that foundational feature of the food chain, everything is starting to collapse in the lagoon. Everything that depends on seagrass to eat is disappearing as well. Most of the lagoon seagrasses grow in water that's less than 3 feet deep because more light can penetrate the shallow water and reach the seagrass, which needs to photosynthesize to survive. So it makes sense that as water clarity improves, seagrass improves. Let's go back to that chart again. When we look at the 2 lines of water quality and seagrass quality, we see that historically they kind of track together within 10 points of each other even. When sometimes there was a lag where water quality would improve, and then a year later, seagrass would improve. Then water quality would go down, and a year later, seagrass would collapse, and it would go up and down that way. However, I need to put my glasses on. More recently, this relationship has changed such that water quality is kind of continuing up and down, but maintaining a steady line, and seagrass is precipitously declining. There are now 45 points separating the 2. Since 2016, water quality has been improving and seagrass has not. We don't know what is causing the seagrass to not return. There are a number of things that need to be investigated before we start just putting seagrass back in the lagoon. We need to know whether it's going to survive. Some scientists think that something has happened to the sediment on the bottom of the lagoon that's not allowing the plant to take hold or to thrive. Some scientists think that there's overgrazing occurring, which is certainly the case when there's only, if there was 1 cheeseburger in the room right now and we were all starving, we would be overgrazing on that cheeseburger, right? So there's not much seagrass left. The pinfish are eating it. The sea turtles are eating it. The manatees are trying to eat it. So yes, there's a lot of grazing on the few pieces of seagrass that are left, but that's not what's preventing it from coming back. We believe that there might be something else in the water column. There's something else dealing with the water chemistry that could be impacting seagrass. It's critically important that we find out what that is. We need to save our paradise. This is too important. With the loss of seagrass, we are losing a lot more. We're losing our beloved manatees and sea turtles and fish. some of the things that people come here for, to enjoy, to come and play and work here and have fun. Let's look at an example of this from the Banana River Lagoon. This is probably our most extreme example. I've got charts like this for every region. This is the only one I'm going to show today, but know that when we go on the road, we're going to drill into each region that we are visiting. So this is the one we're going to kind of drill into today. It's Banana River Lagoon. You can see the most, I think, dramatic relationship here between the seagrass and the water quality, where extreme changes in water quality and extreme changes in seagrass coverage have occurred since 2010, which is the year of the super bloom. Oopsie. So right about in here is when our first major algal bloom occurred in the Indian River Lagoon, and it was reflected in the water quality data, and then of course in the resulting seagrass loss. But then as water quality recovered, seagrasses recovered about halfway, and then it dropped and seagrasses dropped, and they have not come back. So this is a situation where this system is really in peril. So how is that affecting the other creatures that are living there? Thanks to our friends at the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, we have 30 years of fisheries data throughout the lagoon. Dr. Rich Paperno is a rock star. These are his data. I think I have a line here. So this is when it's meaningful to look at these data in terms of pre and post super bloom event, because fish data are kind of episodic. And so you can see that these episodes, this is pinfish, which is an important bait fish in the lagoon. It's one of the key species that relies on seagrass throughout its life. And it's also a bait fish that a lot of the other bigger fish are going to be eating. So this is kind of that seagrass to the next level of carnivore link in the food web, so to speak. So you can see that pinfish have dropped off. If we were going to try to do some lines here, we would see that pinfish populations have dropped in the Banana River Lagoon. This is snapper. That's one of my favorite eating fish. But this is gray snapper, and you can see where that division line is. You see the same scenarios happening. So we're losing our fisheries, folks. This is our favorite, right? The snook, another great eating fish. It's all about food with me and fish, by the way. And again, the line, you can see where in the pre-2010, we had a much more population of snook in the Banana River Lagoon than we do now. We're seeing this throughout the system. And of course, this is the horror we're facing again. This winter is the loss of manatees in the state of Florida, and particularly in the Indian River Lagoon. The heat map shows last year's data. There are 1,101 dead manatees in the state, about 1/6 of the population, which is sadly what we predicted in January of last year, that we would lose 1/6 of the population, and we did. Let's see, last year there were 1,101 total. Almost half of those were in the Indian River Lagoon. This year, again, so far, 375 total carcasses in the state of Florida, and 300 of them in the Indian River Lagoon. So sadly, from January to the current, we're losing manatees at a rate much higher than we did last January. Last year, it was about 20 a week. We're at almost 40 a week now. And the real difficult part is watching the babies looking for a friend, I guess, out there. So that's the bad news. But the good news is we have an opportunity right now to make it right. We have an opportunity to take this into our own hands and fix it. That's why MRC is calling on you, our community, our state, our federal leaders, and our regional partners to help expand water quality testing in the Indian River Lagoon so we can figure out what's preventing seagrass from returning. Currently, the state's water quality testing only includes those 4 parameters that we use in the report card. Maybe we should be measuring other things besides nutrients. What if PFAS is killing seagrass? We know PFAS is in the seagrass, and we know PFAS is in manatees. PFAS is a really toxic chemical that is in the lagoon. What if herbicides are killing the seagrass, which makes perfect sense? Herbicide use in the state of Florida has increased 6 to 8-fold in the past 10 years. We're using way more herbicide to manage our aquatic weeds than we ever have before. So it makes sense that if we're spraying all of our canals with herbicides, it's getting into the lagoon, it could be affecting seagrass health. We need to find that out. It's kind of critical that we either identify that it's herbicides or we put that to rest and we know it's not herbicides. But until we start sampling for herbicides, we're never going to be able to answer that question. We need to immediately start doing that. Fund and mobilize, in our case, citizen scientists, to collect those samples and send them to certified laboratories to test for pesticides and herbicides so we can find those sources and stop it. Trained citizen scientists can provide the state of Florida with 1,000 samples taken over a year from the 10 major tributaries that are reaching the Indian River Lagoon. We'll call the program 1,000 Points of Life. Not only will it unite our citizens and government partners, but it's a cooperative effort that can inspire the world. It also will lead to answering some really important questions about what's going on with the water chemistry in the Indian River Lagoon that aren't being answered otherwise. We need to keep moving forward to expand water quality testing in the Indian River Lagoon so we can understand what's going on with this seagrass loss. I hope you will join us as we continue our journey to protect our paradise here at the Ted Moorhead Lagoon House, located at Eyes Lookout Point Park. The Lagoon House is sustainably developed it's about to be sustainably developed to be a fully accessible campus in partnership with our city of Palm Bay, providing access to anyone who's interested in looking out over the lagoon that the Eyes Indians once looked out over. Maybe not the same lagoon. At the Lagoon House, we showcase examples of low-impact development that anyone can do in their yards and at their businesses, starting with the pervious parking spaces in the main parking lot that allows rainwater to percolate into the ground. The planted shoreline of our mini lagoon, which is here, this is our mini lagoon. The planted shoreline turns this into a habitat, and those plants are cleaning that stormwater pond, making it an actual functioning ecosystem instead of just a sterile stormwater management device. That's why we call it a mini lagoon and not just a stormwater pond. Everybody's pond can become a meaningful piece of habitat that's cleaning water instead of just a polluting turf grass, stormwater management system. Our native rain gardens are fed by stormwater reducing rain barrels, which we use to water our butterfly gardens, our mangrove nursery, and everything else on the grounds. The nature trails that take you to our Eyes Lookout Point Park, you can see our shoreline restoration test plots. We're working in partnership with these awesome people down here. I particularly like the Partnership for Plastic-Free Oyster Restoration team. We're working in partnership with these folks to create concrete reef structures, concrete creations, as we're calling them, of all shapes and sizes, to build oyster reefs with safe, inert, sustainable materials like pH-balanced concrete and jute. Volunteers of all ages have created hundreds of concrete creations now, and there will be many, many more. Oyster prisms, oyster towers, mangrove volcanoes. Yes, oyster mangrove volcanoes will be rising in the Indian River Lagoon soon. We'll be developing concrete prisms at the Lagoon House and installing them in the near future. We were supposed to do it this weekend, but weather is not allowing. The goal is a 1,500-foot natural shoreline demonstration project that shows how to build protective reef structures using a variety of natural materials and, more importantly, demonstrates a more sustainable way for homeowners to protect their property from storm surge and erosion without the use of seawalls. Ted Moorhead Lagoon House serves as a living lagoon classroom for K-12 schools and universities and community groups, and for our own Lagoon Castaway youth summer camps, and a community space for anyone interested in learning about how they can make a difference in the Indian River Lagoon. This summer, we're offering 8 weeks of lagoon castaway camps, engaging kids aged 8 to 13 in experiential learning experiences in the Indian River Lagoon. MRC is continuing to advance the use of science to guide seagrass restoration by coordinating a seagrass assembly in partnership with Save the Manatee Club. We have a seagrass problem that we need to solve, and we need to do it strategically and intentionally. So we're putting together in a room the leading experts on seagrass science and seagrass management and seagrass installation to hash through possibly 2 days of facilitated discussion on how do we select the ideal sites for seagrass planting, how do we plan adequate resources to plant 117,000 acres of seagrass back, and how do we evaluate the success of that? We only get one shot at this. We need to do it right. Nobody has the resources to plant all of the seagrass. We have to do this as a community. And of course, we will continue to encourage the use of low-impact development practices and smart planning to protect our paradise. Holding our next low-impact development workshop focused on modifying land development regs in partnership with the University of Florida this fall. So what can you do? There are so many things that we can do to reduce our pollution footprint. The one thing I want to ask you to do today is to learn more. Go to our website at savetheirl.org, visit our partners' websites, learn about low-impact development that you can do in your own homes. Things like disconnect the gutter that drains your roof onto your driveway. It's a simple, that drains your roof onto your driveway, disconnect it and simply put it into a garden or a flower garden or the lawn. Or better yet, direct it to a rain barrel. Plant a tree in your yard. Install a living shoreline. Volunteer for a cleanup event. Refuse to fertilize your lawn and start a landscape revolution in your homeowners association. We need to keep doing what we're doing, and we need to do more. We need to keep reducing sources of pollution, prevent polluted wastewater from entering the lagoon. We need to upgrade our wastewater treatment plants, disconnect septic tanks and connect them to the sewer and restore habitat. We need to engage and educate and change policies, and we need to change our landscapes. The good news is we have a plan and we can do it. The report card is a tool to help you affect that change. So use it in your communities and in your conversations. After this webinar, you can download it. It'll all be on the website at savetheirl.org. The report card, all of those graphs and the tables will be out there. We'll be mailing the report card to all of our MRC members, donors, and supporters. If you or organizations that you support would like to have a presentation, please contact us. We'll bring report cards with us and share them with your community. We'll be here on these dates. We're looking to fill, rooms in other parts of the lagoon, your community, ? So we are looking to, we're going on the road with the report card. And like I mentioned, when we get out into these local areas, we'll be more specific in what's going on, for example, in the South Indian River Lagoon. We'll drill into the South Indian River Lagoon when we go down to Martin County and talk to their city council. We couldn't do this without your support. Thank you all. Thank you to our 1,000 friends. Well, this is where it died the last time. Isn't that crazy? It doesn't there it is. Okay. Thank you to our 1,000 friends who donate $1,000, Thank you to the Friends of the Indian River Lagoon who donate $1,000 or more to the report card every year. This is the list of donors for 21-22. Gonna leave them up there. You guys are awesome. We couldn't do it without you, honestly. This is it's a big effort, and it's a big project, especially creating it and then taking it on the road. Thank you to my awesome team, Ken Parks, Katie Savoya, Allison McGinley, Caitlin Bagnall, Cara Woods, Julie Albert, Bree Forte, Mara Scadden, Steve Sharkey, Nicole Brooke Nichols. You guys are awesome. Couldn't do what I do without you. And our incredible volunteers, our board of directors. Imagine what we can do when we work together. The Imagine piece, this was signed at the LED conference. We've got a blank one back there today. Encourage you all to sign it before you leave and put your name on the vision that we share with the community. And last, have to recognize our rock star partners who have been keeping this going for all these years. Applied Ecology has been, we've been working with Applied Ecologies from the very, very beginning. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. Gillespie Family Foundation was the very first family foundation to come forward and start funding this project, and they've done it every year since. Recently, Save the Manatee Club, joined as a major partner because of the issues going on with seagrass in the lagoon and manatees. And then the data that is used in this report is provided by our water management districts, and we can't thank them enough for the hard work that they're doing to maintain a water quality data base in the Indian River Lagoon. And thank you all. Thanks for being here in the room. Thank you all for being on the call. And I wanted to share some last resources so that, I'll open up for questions, that you can learn more. So of course, our website is up here, irlclimate.org. We'll answer a lot of questions about how is climate affecting the Indian River Lagoon. It certainly is. So go out there, and there's some fantastic information put together by Dr. Ken Lindeman in partnership with the Citizens Climate Lobby. The onelagoon.org website is our Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. They have the comprehensive plan. So if you're curious as to where's the plan going for all this, they've got the plan. And then of course, here in Brevard County, the Save Our Indian River Lagoon projects are all listed on Brevard County's website at brevardfl.gov, or you can Google Save Our Indian River Lagoon, Brevard County. They've got the projects listed there. They are doing a lot of work in Brevard through that tax. The Rivers Coalition down in Martin County has some great information on the Lake Okeechobee effects on the south end of the lagoon. If you're interested in Lake Okeechobee, reach out to them. And then SaveTheManatee.org is where you'll find out the latest on what's going on with manatee health. So again, thank you for sticking with us through the rain and shine and the stormy weather. We're making headway, but we can't give up because it's just too important. So thank you. That's all I got. And now I'll take questions.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Leesa. We are going to be walking around the room here in person, collecting any question cards. And if you are on Zoom, as a reminder, please go to the question and answer rather than the chat. All right, so here is our first question. We are asking, how can we help our neighbors to actually care about the Indian River Lagoon?
Oh, that's a good question. It really depends on your neighbor and their attitude, right? But it's a tough one. So I think that as soon as we start talking to the public, we start to realize that people have different ways of looking at things. So I was kidding when I said it depends on your neighbor, but that's kind of the idea, is kind of think about, let them talk and think about where they're coming from and engage at that level. And if where they're coming from is something like that is not scientific, then we're a scientific organization. We tend to just kind of rein it back to, well, we're a scientifically driven organization, so we don't agree with that statement. So there's a lot of misinformation in the public. And so it's just kind of a gentle, maybe we're in a position where it's easier for us because we can say, well, we're science-based and we don't agree because we're science-based. But, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Awesome. And we have a few questions coming in person and through Zoom about muck. So we're wondering if the muck is a factor in the lack of seagrass growth, and should more emphasis be put on muck removal?
Ooh, it depends on the region that you're in, but yes, certainly. I mean, places like the Banana River that are just got 9 feet of muck in them, you can believe for sure that that's having an effect on seagrasses returning. And that's kind of one of the areas of investigation for those scientists who are saying that something has changed in the sediment. That's kind of what they're talking about, is, what has changed. I will say that historically, I mean, we've had muck in the lagoon for a long time. So I think there's been muck in seagrass. So I don't think muck has killed seagrass, but it may be preventing it from coming back if muck is establishing in areas where it hasn't been before. We've got some really good science on muck, thanks to John Treffry and Dr. Fox, Austin Fox over at FIT, understanding really the chemical dynamics of muck. And one of the key features is the lack of oxygen. So that's going to have an impact on everything, including a seed base or a rhizome that's trying to get started. If it's like in muck, if it's in a chemical compound that's not going to allow oxygen to enter, then that's going to be an issue. So it's very possible. It's one of those questions that needs to be kind of investigated before we put it to bed, before we dismiss it.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. In reference to the fish population graphs, were these values standardized for catch per unit effort across the years?
I have no idea. Danielle, were they standardized for catch per unit effort?
They were the mean number of fish per pole.
The mean number of fish per pole is the answer that we are getting from the audience.
Ding, 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 ding. Good job.
Thank you. Love this. This person wants to get involved. How do you become a citizen scientist to contribute?
Yay! Go to savetheirl.org and you can sign up as a volunteer. If you're particularly interested in Lagoon Watch, I would encourage you to contact Cara Woods directly. Her email is, it's our first name at mrcirl.org. We're always looking for citizen scientists. We're trying to engage upstreams. So if you live on one of our main tributaries, and I'm talking Crane Creek, Turkey Creek, the O'Galley River, Horse Creek, what else is in Brevard? If you live on a river in Brevard and you're interested in water quality testing, we really, really need you. Or actually, if you live on a river in any of the 6 counties along the lagoon, let us know. The herbicide testing that we're interested in producing, we need the money first, of course. The herbicide lab fees alone, it's about $1,000 a sample. So that's why they're not doing it, okay? Herbicide analysis is very expensive because there's so many of them that you need to run a lot of tests. And so some of them are really scary too. So we want to get started in the tributaries because we think that's where it's coming in.
A couple more questions too on Zoom and in person that are in regards to PFAS. What's the current research on it, and how would that be funded to?
Yeah, so I am not a PFAS expert, so I'm not all in the literature on PFAS, but I did hear when I was up in Tallahassee that there was an appropriation, well, I guess we'll find out tomorrow whether it was approved or not, to fund $1 million to the University of Florida to investigate PFAS in the Indian River Lagoon. So that's going to be enormously helpful in understanding the effect that PFAS is having on the system. It is it's a pretty serious public health issue as well as some of these herbicides are. So it was I guess good to see that the state was willing to invest that kind of money to investigate a toxin like that. And I would suggest that they invest the same amount to investigate herbicides and give it to us, and we'll send citizen scientists out. We'll collect 1,000 samples.
And other than what's currently being tested for right now, I know you also mentioned PFAS and herbicides. Are there any other types of tests that would be useful?
Probably. I mean, it would be good to have, I think, more of the other, pesticides, salinity, more salinity data. It would be nice if they would do dissolved oxygen at the same time every day. We really can't use DO data because it's taken at different times of the day, and DO is, goes up and down normally twice a day, or depending on where you are. So, I think, what we're calling for is the toxins. We're not seeing toxins. There are some physical parameters that would be helpful. Can you think of any others, Danielle, that you're working with that we don't have that would be good? So when we're talking about herbicides, we are talking about like glyphosate, dicamba, some of these really harmful things that the public, you all, our community, have been talking to me about for a long time, about having it affect your health. In fact, I had 2 ladies in here yesterday, I think, or the day before, popped in and she's like, her hand's shaking. She's like, this started when they started spraying some herbicide behind my house. And I've heard that over and over and over again from people feeling justified in that their health is being impacted by a certain herbicide. And that's, another reason we need to be thinking about these toxins. I think the most critical thing for us to focus on, besides what we're doing, is the toxins, pesticides and herbicides, and PFAS, which University of Florida is going to be going for. Is that good?
Any success in seagrass projects that are currently ongoing? This one is specifically asking about Sampson's Island.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what happened with Sampson's Island. I heard from one seagrass researcher that it was a complete bust and everything died. But then I heard from others that some things were being replanted and coming back. So I'm not, personally involved with the project. Is there anybody else in the room that would know about the success of that planting? Yeah, so I guess what we're hoping to accomplish with the assembly is a strategic way to do seagrass planting and evaluation, not this piecemeal, somebody has an idea, let's just throw seagrass here, there, and everywhere, and then let's just not determine whether it's going to live or die. Let's just let fate sort it out. That's not really scientific. So to try to come up with really an intentional way to do that, an intentional way to have adequate resources to grow 117,000 acres of seagrass, which is a lot of seagrass to grow. To just that is a challenge in itself, but then just to come up with a methodology. Science loves methodologies, a methodology for identifying the priority areas that need to have seagrass planted and where they're most likely to succeed. That would be, a pretty simple model. Then a method for planting, and that we have methods, so let's test them and see which ones are working, which ones aren't. And then a method for evaluating, monitoring the seagrass and evaluating its success, and how long do we expect it to take for seagrasses to come back. So, that's how I think we need to proceed with seagrass restoration. We need to do it intentionally and strategically using science, not just planting it wherever it's convenient. We've done a lot of convenience restoration work in the lagoon thus far. We need to back up now and be intentional. With seagrass planting, we're going to get one shot at this. We need to get it right. And I can't say that enough times. This patch meal stuff here, there, and everywhere, all it's doing is adding to the nutrient load in the lagoon. Every time it dies, it releases all of its nutrients. And now we've got more stuff, rotting in the lagoon. So seagrass assembly, seagrass scientists, we've got brilliant people here that know how it works. Let's get them together in a room and come up with a plan and get it done. We can do this. We can do this.
Awesome. So Brevard's half-cent sales tax sunsets in 2026. What should happen after that to continue the momentum?
What should happen after that? Well, I think it should get back on the ballot and get refunded. Let's do that. Is that an answer?
Yes.
I don't know if that's. And I'll expand on that because I think that there are people who are concerned about it and that it's not being used correctly. And I don't agree with that. I think that they are kind of the framework for decision-making of the Brevard County Citizens Oversight Committee and the Brevard County personnel is the framework of the state of Florida. So the Florida's framework of water quality is all about reducing stormwater loads. It's all about nitrogen, phosphorus, turbidity, chlorophyll A, those things that we've been working on for a long time in Florida to reduce stormwater loads of those 4 things. So that's where the science is, that's where the research is, that's where the background is, the experience, and everybody knows that, and they know it works. So isn't it, kind of the responsible thing to do what they know is going to work with our tax money, not, flippantly try things that they're not sure is going to work or not. So they're trying to do the responsible thing. Where they're limited is our state framework, that we're so myopic and only looking at nutrients and only looking at stormwater at the state level. And it's really because the feds made us. I probably wouldn't be looking at that either. But so I don't agree. I think that Brevard County is doing a fantastic job within the framework that they have established for them. They have a dense bureaucracy and procurement oversight that is like ridiculous, and they're getting it done. They've got 50 projects in the ground now. They've got probably 150 in the works. It takes a long time just to get a contract because it's a bureaucracy, but they're getting it done, and they're a very small team, and God bless them. Every day they're getting hammered by somebody who doesn't think they're doing it right, and they keep doing it. And I'm just like, don't give up, don't give up. Don't let them get you down. Stay on track. So as far as I'm concerned, they're moving forward strategically. They're using the science that they have within a limited framework that our state has given them, and they're doing it right. I don't know what I would recommend that they change the next time they put it on the ballot. I would say go for it the same way you have it, and see how it goes. But I really hope that our citizens will rise up and again vote for the Save Our Indian River Lagoon tax in Brevard.
Awesome. I'm going to combine a couple questions here. These questions are asking about oyster prisms and mangrove plantings. Do these help, and do they actually work in areas with existing seawalls?
Well, that's a good question. I wonder if Katie could take part of that. But let me see if I can go back to that picture. Oh, I can't do anything. I'm going to try. Nope. Maybe I go that way. Darn it. So off and on. Oh, well, can't go back to it. If you get a chance, and those of you on the Zoom, to come here, you can go down to our shoreline and see the incredible accretion of sand. We have a whole nice new beach down there because of where we placed oyster prisms. So wherever you put them out, we put them 10 feet out from mean high water, which is what we were permitted to do. And between now those prisms and that 10 feet high water line, a lot of sand has come in. So it is effectively accreting sand. So now we have a wetland marsh. We can plant mangroves there. We've got some emergent vegetation coming in, and it's become habitat. So absolutely, these oyster prisms are accreting sand, and they're protecting our shoreline, which is a very severe bluff. So we're accreting shoreline and protecting our bluff from eroding further. It's very important. We only have, I think, 100 feet in there now. So once it gets bigger, we're going to have way more accretion and way more shoreline to plant mangroves and to have wetland plants and restore that habitat. So yeah, that's the intention. I don't know, and the second part of your question is a great question, is, what can you do in front of a seawall? So again, it kind of depends on the situation and how deep your seawall, the water is in front of your seawall. But we have a brilliant restoration scientist / deputy director who you could talk to. Her name's Katie Savoia, katie@mrcirl.org. And she would have to kind of handle that on a case-by-case basis on whether she would advise doing some kind of a protective feature in front of a seawall or not. Is that fair, Katie? Takes a team, I'm telling you, it takes a team.
Is there a list of MRC-approved lagoon-friendly contractors and lawn care pros?
We have a green business program, or at least we did, that has some people on it on our website. You can go to greenbusiness.org. Those folks have gone really above and beyond to be a green business. Not only do they have to not pollute the water, but they also have to reduce their energy use and their solid waste use and a whole cadre of other sustainability practices to be accredited as a green business. So we've got some out there. I can't think of their names off the top of my head. I usually can't think of my name off the top of my head. So but you have to go out there, mrcirl.org green business, or just Google Marine Resources Council Green Business Program, and there'll be some names there. And can I add to that? Keep Brevard Beautiful is doing a lagoon-friendly landscaping. Yes, is that what it's called? Lagoon-friendly landscaping. And I think they're certifying, or maybe they're certifying yards. They might also be certifying lawn care professionals. So check out KBB's website too.
Wonderful. We are wondering about testing for 2021. The report ends with 2020.
That's a great question. So our data that we get from the state is 1.5 to 2 years old. So we're always looking kind of at the past, which is a real problem when you're dealing with a system that's collapsing very quickly. So yes, we need to encourage the state to release their data sooner, which kind of goes back to we need to empower our water management districts. Our water management districts were the premier entity responsible for managing water in our state. The rest of our country used to look at Florida for being brilliant for establishing water management districts that were watershed defined. Those districts have unique, missions of focusing on a specific watershed. They used to be, and I want to say this, I'm going to be careful here. They lost about half of their budget and half of their staff about 10 years ago, and that has never been restored. So with the loss of people, a couple things happened. They had to reduce sampling tremendously, managed to maintain a monitoring program, which they did a fantastic job of maintaining any water monitoring program at all. The other thing that happened was the guys that used to run those harvester machines that harvested the weeds from the canals all lost their jobs. So now they started to broadcast spraying. So the loss of employees at the water management districts really disempowered them. What is that word? Made them less powerful. Sadly, a lot of the people there that lost their jobs were the ones that were about to retire. So it was more like one of those, hey, you want to retire early scenario. So these are the most intelligent people that knew the system the best. So we lost all of them. And then the ones that were left, of course, are terrified, right? So they're like, didn't want to lose their jobs by blinking or for whatever reason. Who knows how people were selected, but it was a horrible time. It was a horrible time in our state and in the environmental community when, one of your friends after the other that you've been working with for decades loses their job for no apparent reason, So we need to re-empower our water management districts. We need to give them their money back. They haven't ever gotten their money back that was cut from their budgets. We've got serious water issues, not just here, our entire state. Our springs have got algae blooms in them. Everything is going off right now. We need our districts to be back out in the field doing what they do, gathering the data, being the lead entity, especially here in the Lagoon, St. John's. You guys need to be the leaders on the seagrass thing. You are the leaders on it. So step up and become the leaders of it. What comes out of the Seagrass Assembly needs to have a place to live, and I'm hoping it's going to be you guys. So, those of you who are politically minded, get to know your local representatives and your state and local representatives and senators, and start talking to them about that. Talk to them about, hey, well, how about getting the water management districts their money back, their budgets back, so they can do the monitoring that they need to do, so they can do the seagrass research they need to do, so we can, really start managing our water.
Thank you.
I'll leave it at that.
So should we also be testing our sediment, and can seagrass even grow in the current sediment on the lagoon?
Oh, we need to find that out. That's a good question. Yes. I'd like to say probably FIT and the legacy of Dr. John Treffry and Dr. Austin Fox there now. They have the experience and the knowledge, the long-term knowledge of sediment quality in the lagoon, and they should be the ones to do that. So they've got the history and the knowledge and the capabilities and the equipment in the laboratory. So yes, they should, and they are. They're testing more muck, right? So whenever there's a muck removal project, we need to know how to deal with that material. And so they're testing and they're evaluating, how is muck management working, and how extensive, to what extent is it removing nutrients? When you take muck out, is it also taking out nitrogen, and how much phosphorus, and so on? One of the interesting things about muck, besides that it is anoxic down there's nothing can grow in muck, is that in that DO, when it's at low oxygen or zero oxygen at the sediment level, it causes phosphorus to be released into the water column. So one of the things that we've noticed in the past 10 years is phosphorus levels increasing in the lagoon. And what we're starting to think is that it's actually internal cycling, that it's internal, that's phosphorus that already was in the lagoon, but now because of all this muck, it's being released. So there's a lot of moving parts, right? It's like so many variables. You have to like kind of give each one a little bit of attention to figure out if there's any credence there, to investigate more. But yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things everybody's wondering is, did something basically change in the sediment that's now not allowing seagrasses to return? We asked the same question of clams years ago, right? Clams used to cover the entire bottom of the lagoon. They were over harvested and they never came back. So why didn't the clams come back? And the same question was asked then. Is there something that has changed about the pH in the sediment of the lagoon that these clams cannot set? So now we have super clams and they are setting, and we've got them right here at the lagoon house and they seem to be growing and thriving. So, maybe something has changed back.
All right. And we've had a couple questions on sludge. So what is currently being done about sewage sludge, agriculture sludge that's being dumped into the lagoon?
Biosolids? I don't think any biosolids are being dumped in the lagoon. I'm not sure what that means.
All right.
I don't have a clock. You guys going to tell me where we are? Okay, cool. Thank you.
So are there any up-to-date maps of existing seagrass, and what is the mapping process looking like? How are they generated?
Yeah, I don't know. The water management districts typically fly every other year. Do you know, Danielle?
Yeah, every other year. The last year was 2019, so 2021 should be out maybe this year, I think. Okay,
so if those on the Zoom didn't hear that, I'll repeat it. Danielle suggested that they just flew last year, and we expect to see new maps come out this year from St. John's River Water Management District. I know that St. John's is considering a lot of different methods, sonar, multi-beam sonar as one of them, to try to get a better capture of seagrass in those shallow areas. So remember, I mentioned that right now where we're finding it because of the water clarity, it's in the most shallow areas of the lagoon, and that's really hard to capture in some cases. And so they're investigating a whole bunch of different methods to get that done. So again, we need the most innovative and the most smart and the most capable teams on that. So Water Management District budgets refunded, please.
Are there historical data for salinity levels and water levels?
Are there? Yes, there certainly are. We've got salinity. Water levels, water level is kind of an interesting one because we don't have good bathymetry data, right? So the bathymetry is at the bottom of the lagoon, and I think I haven't been a researcher lately, but back when I was at FIT, we were looking to do models. When we needed good bathymetry data, we were looking like patched together NOAA data from 1991. So you can believe that the lagoon's bottom has changed since then a lot. So it's hard to really measure water level without understanding where the bottom is. Elevation, I'm sure we have elevation, right? Water elevation data. That exists. It's probably in the data set, no?
It might have gone currently collected. And then we do have salinity, it's just there's no regulatory targets for it. So
right. Thank you. So Danielle's just reminding me that the reason we don't use salinity in the report card is because there are no regulatory targets. The only parameters that we can use, because what we're doing is creating an offset to compare the actual condition with the target. So we can only use those things that have targets. And the only things that have targets are the TMDLs, the TMDL things. So that's why we're not using salinity or dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen has targets, but we don't sample dissolved oxygen so that we could compare them with the targets.
Are homeowners along the Indian River Lagoon embracing the use of living shorelines, and how are they being educated about those?
Everyone is, yes. So that's a tough one. So I think in Brevard, it's particularly challenging because we have a high energy system and a lot of seawalls. So it's difficult to put in a living shoreline where there's already an existing seawall. We're working on that. Like I mentioned, my brilliant restoration scientist, Katie, who's not in the room at the moment, she's challenged with that. That's kind of one of our reasons for these concrete creations, as we're calling them, is, you know, can we build something that will work in different scenarios, in a seawall scenario, one that's in a shallow water, one that's in a deeper water. You know, how do we get mangroves and vegetation to maintain, secure itself in a high energy environment? What I mean by that is that, especially with seawalls, in here in Brevard, this long linear system, if the wind starts blowing out of the east or west, the waves start bouncing back and forth, and they will build up what we call fetch, which is a tremendous amount of energy underwater that is just starts bouncing, erode. And that's why everybody puts seawalls up, which exacerbates that. It exacerbates it a lot. And so it's really hard when you've got this high energy system with waves bouncing back and forth to put a mangrove, because now it's, as soon as it, you know, rains or storm, the energy is going to wipe it right out. So that's where these concrete creations are hopefully going to weigh down the mangroves, provide a place for oysters to naturally settle or even go inside. It turns out there's a little sea squirt out there that filters even more water than oysters. So let's get some sea squirt baskets out there, and you know, try to really recruit a whole myriad of organisms to attach to these reef structures and do what they do best: filter water and create habitat and become food for other creatures. But the ones who like to do it are like committed, right? So the homeowners that come to us and they're like, well, I really want a living shoreline. And we go to their house and we're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? But, you know, they'll make it work, right? So there's like the people that will do it. But I think the majority of people we're going to have to convince. So that's not going to be an easy conversation, but it's a meaningful one. I would suggest one way is to show people what failing seawalls look like. They're all over the place. We've got lots of them in Brevard County. And a failing seawall looks like it's falling into the lagoon and turning into rubble, and now your whole property is eroding. But what's really bad about these failing seawalls is when they fall, they usually take a big chunk of your yard with them. So maybe 10 feet of your yard falls in with your seawall. We can now plant a living shoreline because you've got all this rubble and half of your yard is in the lagoon. So when your seawall falls in, that's a great opportunity to do something better. That's what happened here, right? When we first built the lagoon house in 2004, the city of Palm Bay put a bunch of rocks out there for our shoreline. And in 2004, guess what happened? We got hit with 2 major hurricanes and 2 minor ones. So 4 hurricanes total took that rubble down, took it all the way up to the fraternity house next door and deposited it on their shoreline, where we just took it off when I got here, probably 10 years ago. We went down and found our shoreline down there. Didn't know that it was down there. They told us, but in 2005, MRC said, can we do this right now? And we planted the living shoreline that's out there that has now survived many more hurricanes ever since then. So there's a perfect, again, demonstration of a way that you can do it right. I mean, there are a few Brazilian peppers out there we need to get rid of, but for the most part, those are all beautiful natives, and they are there are some gorgeous established mangroves. They're holding that in place. They're protecting this feature right here, and we've gone through many more hurricanes ever since, and it's been brilliant, performing brilliantly. So there's your example, and sometimes that's the best way, and that's why we want to showcase this. We want to make this a showcase, demonstrate how it can be done. When people see it, then seeing is believing. Then they know, oh, it does work. Look at that. Isn't it beautiful? Look at all those butterflies. We even have the endangered Atala butterfly on our property now. Maybe it's not endangered anymore, but it's just great. Like if you plant it, they will come, right? Plant your native plants, make your yard a habitat, and you'll have beautiful birds and butterflies. Are we good on time? Are you guys okay in the room? We're gonna go longer, I think. All right, thank you. You have to go? Okay, I won't take it personally. Thank you for being here. All right.
Our next question says, how much of our water quality improvements are tied to our efforts in the sales tax? And how much is going on because of cold, dry winters or climate change?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's one of the things that science is supposed to tease out, right? Like what's different from background. I mean, that's basically what we're always trying to do, is figure out what's just happening back there and tease out what's different. So I could picture an experimental design to answer that, but I don't think anybody's done that yet. But that would be doable.
Right on. Who can citizens write or contact to encourage $1 million of funding for the testing and the 1,000 Points of Life monitoring program?
Thank you. Please write to any and all state and federal representative along the Indian River Lagoon. Session is ending, or maybe it'll be extended for this year, but we were there this year and we've already planted the seed about this project. So they're interested. So what we hope to do is spend pretty much the summer meeting one-on-one with our representatives and our partners and really trying to push that forward through an appropriation next year. So not too early to get started with letters to our representatives. I'm not sure which region you're in. I think it's more meaningful if you write to the representative of where you live, of your area of your district, so to speak. But that's where we're looking. We're going to be going to the state to try to get an appropriation next year. Thank you for that.
What can we do about water drainage coming from out of the county?
I'm not sure what that's referencing, but it brings to mind something I meant to mention earlier, which is first acknowledge your point, which is we get drainage from all over. I mean, you could argue that we get drainage from Orlando that goes down the Kissimmee River into the Lake Okeechobee, which gets diverted to either side of the state and hits the St. Lucie estuary and goes into the Indian River Lagoon. So yeah, we get drainage from the entire central part of the state. So what can we do about that? One of the things, again, I'm going to plug the water management districts and encourage the state to give them their budgets back. One of the things that they're doing is they are redirecting canals back to the west where there's adequate land for them to store water, and it can be treated through wetland marshes like there's a whole bunch of them. All their names just evaporated from my brain, but there are some recreational areas like the Stick Marsh, which has, I think, a more formal name, out west that are designed systems to help remove nutrients from the water column. Turns out the vegetation, emergent vegetation, like I was showing you our shoreline with all of the beautiful canna lilies and emergent vegetation coming out of the pond, that's the best way to get nutrients out of the water column. The best is to just have plants, right? Algae wants to take it up and all those other things, but plant native plants and let the native plants do the work. So that's what they're doing at the district. They're taking these canals that are just sure shots into the lagoon. They're re-diverting them out west, putting them through marshes full of salt marsh grasses and swamp, hardwoods, and so on. That's taking the nutrients out, and then they're releasing cleaner water into the St. Johns River. So that's a way to re-divert water that's coming into the lagoon and into our coastal areas and get it back into staging areas in the center of the state where it can percolate and to get taken up by vegetation. But that's that's a very grandiose project. It's like a water management district level project. That would need to be implemented because multi-county, multi-jurisdictional types of projects. And that's why, again, our water management districts were so effective, is that their jurisdiction kind of was watershed bound, not, bound by just a county or city boundary. So they're the ones who do those projects.
Are there any plans for Brevard County-based laboratory-grown seagrass sanctuaries to help source future reestablishment?
I heard that the zoo's aquarium was going to be a seagrass growing facility in Brevard County. There are, I think, 4 other seagrass growing facilities planned along the lagoon, according to the National Estuary Program. Go to the NEP website and you'll see their restoration centers plan. One is our partners down at Florida Oceanographic Society in Fort Pierce. They have a seagrass growing facility. Our partner Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute, our good friend Dennis Hanasek there is growing seagrasses, Brevard Zoo, and then Marine Discovery Center up in Volusia.
Is the Indian River Lagoon grass loss at all similar to the grass loss in Tampa Bay in the 50s?
Yes, we both lost grass.
I'm wondering if they're thinking that it was pollutant related.
Oh yeah. So the Tampa Bay, both bodies of water were receiving a lot of untreated wastewater still in the 80s. It was the actions of this community, led by Marine Resources Council, that effectively passed the laws that required that they disconnect wastewater treatment plants from our coastal waters. So I know a lot of you are frustrated that we're still releasing untreated wastewater occasionally through accidental discharges now, but back in the 80s up until 1996, they were dumping billions and billions of gallons of raw sewage. It was just one of those dilution's the solution, right? So Tampa Bay was getting it, we were getting it. 1996, they had, well, actually 1991, the law passed. They had 5 years to disconnect from direct discharges. And supposedly there hasn't been any more raw sewage being dumped directly into estuaries. So that had a big effect on Tampa Bay, and it had a big effect here. You can see it in when you look at the scores of water quality, especially nitrogen. It really took a change for the better in about 1996. I mean, we release a lot of nitrogen in our wastewater. So Tampa Bay is open. They have some areas where, like Old Tampa Bay, where they get a retention time almost as long as our lagoon. North Indian River Lagoon retention time is a series of words that kind of means how long the water stays there, like a lake, right? It has a very long retention time. It doesn't go anywhere. It's completely bound. North Indian River Lagoon, Banana River, they're almost like lakes. The water goes in there and it kind of stays in there for a year or more. And so, Mosquito Lagoon and North Indian River Lagoon, lake-like. So they're going to have the longest retention time. Tampa Bay does not have, except certain areas, a very long retention time. That helps. It does help to be open to the ocean. When you disconnect the source of pollution, eventually it's going to start to dissipate, right? So we disconnected our source of pollution, but we don't have a bay here. So that's a key difference in the two systems. But I have seen pictures of Tampa Bay covered in algae, where it looked like it was so thick you could walk on it. So, they had the severe algal blooms that we've had, and they have enacted a lot of things to recover from that, including they have a nutrient management consortium, so a whole group of industry, municipality, private, nonprofits, and so on, working together in a consortium, almost in competition to see who can reduce their nutrients the fastest or the best. And so that was a cool thing that they did. Still going on. They have a website where they have projects, and every project they say, we reduced, 1,000 pounds of nitrogen from going to Tampa Bay. And it's become this kind of tchotchke thing. They're all, look what we've done. Oh, how did you do that? Click. Oh, look at their project. They took this and they did that and they made that work. So I think that was a really cool tool. They have been replanting. We need to learn from them. I'm going to be meeting with Dwayne DeFries of the National Registry Program next week, because he just came from there, about the Seagrass Symposium, and ask him, what are they doing over there, and how can we bring somebody over to learn from their experience? But, they also had 60 Minutes come. So 60 Minutes wants to come and do a special on the lagoon. Maybe that would help. Any 60 Minutes producers out there? So it does. So I think it's encouraging. I think our system is encouraging. I think when we make a slight change, it responds. This is such a resilient estuary. It wants to live. It wants to. We just need to stop poisoning it. We need to figure out what we're doing to poison it and stop. And then it's going to come back. I have 100% confidence in it. It may take a while. I might, be in Italy at that point or wherever I'm going to fly off to someday. But I'm completely confident if we stop poisoning it, it's going to come back to life.
Awesome. And we are going to be wrapping up here. So we're going to take one more question. How can groups, organizations, and individuals become a funding partner and communications partner to help create the report card and distribute it throughout the coastal community?
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for the last question. SaveTheIRL.org. You're welcome to come here to the Lagoon House. We invite you to come and explore our campus and get to know us better. Get involved in what we're doing, come and volunteer, come to our events, donate online, or come in person. We've got so many opportunities to involve. I mean, I'm really proud of us in our phenomenal team, but really in our mission to make the lagoon accessible to all. We want everybody to have an opportunity. It's going to take all of us to get this done. So, let's unite and come together and save our paradise. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.